Ow, 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 ow. It's always nice when we can take a little stroll through Res Dog Walkers. Today I got Sarah Weber from C3 Alliance, who just is a godsend on BCIROC. You know, I think about BCIROC over the years. The first one we did in Campbell River was so small, but it was such a great event. Dan Jepson just running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And then you guys started doing BCNRF and ignored me for a couple of years, but you know, that's okay. We found a way back to working together, and now we're having our 9th, 10th BCIROC.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here. There was no ignoring, for sure. I think BCIROC was ahead of its time.
Could have been.
2009, 2010, 2011. It was, it was really only people that understood that opportunity to work with Indigenous nations that were there. Like, otherwise, some people would be like, well, I don't even understand this conference. Like, why? What do you mean? What do we need to do? Right? It was before DRIPA was passed. Like, now it's definitely a topic of conversation in every boardroom across the province and nationwide. But back then, like, it was 15 years ago. I know, but yeah, I love the old style of conferences. Dan buying flats of pop at the grocery store. We're bringing it into the Thunderbird Hall.
Hall.
Yeah, those were like very grassroots, roots days. So.
Well, I think one of the cool things was it started a discussion that's still continuing today. I think of how hard it was to find panels the first couple of years because there just wasn't a lot of great First Nation success stories. You know, I think we had to have Marco Romero and Numgeese go 2 years in a row to talk about Orca sand and gravel just because we didn't have a lot of Indigenous-led opportunities. There is partnerships, but over the years, we've just seen the grow of success in these partnerships and some of the amazing challenges that they've overcome. But I wanted to have you on today because we're, I think, 6 weeks out from BCIROC. It's coming close. It's coming faster. Both you and I are in perfect health right now, knock on wood. For those of you who don't know, the last 2 years, both Sarah and I have missed a year each just because of different health challenges that we've had to manage and deal with. But we've come through 2 very challenging elections. The British Columbia election really shed some light on some of the fear-mongering that's out there around reconciliation and how it impacts resource development. We got through that. There are some challenges. We're rekindling some discussions. Then we went through a federal election that sort of went the same thing. Fear was really a part of the last couple of elections, and I'm really looking forward to BCIROC because that's a place where there isn't a lot of fear. So just what's some of your thoughts going to? I mean, BCNRF was huge again this year. It was awesome. I know I was up there shaking people's hands and looking for panelists, and it was amazing how many different First Nations leaders came to me and said, I can't wait to come to IROC in June. What are you seeing as you're setting up the logistics and all that? How are we looking?
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be definitely a record year. Being in Prince George in January at the Natural Resources Forum, yeah, a lot of people were looking ahead 6 months to coming back together in Nanaimo. And it's a comment we always get in January. It's like, oh, we can't just meet once a year. And we're like, yeah, well, here's our sister event here. Like, come to Nanaimo. And so great to get to. I think this is going to be it's going to be awesome. We have a lot of Indigenous leaders coming as usual, and this year the Premier EV's coming, and he confirmed pretty early, which was great. He's also got some of his cabinet ministers coming, so it's going to be awesome to see our delegates and everybody dive into conversations around energy projects with Minister Dix,
Chief Chris Roberts,
and a number of those wind projects that are being covered. BCER is coming as well. That's the BC Energy Regulator that is now taking over that permitting piece for those accelerated wind projects. We'll see what that actually means, right? But it's there's a lot of work happening like on the ground, trying to harmonize Indigenous-led assessment work, environmental protection, stewardship, along with economic development. And so I think we're going to see, there's going to be a lot of exciting conversations for sure.
It's really cool to see that evolution because before it was literally just about projects that move dirt. Now we've talked about how we move dirt and then manage it and replace it. And we've talked about so many different values that need to be associated with these projects. And seeing the fact that, people used to tease me for a little while, BCIROC was called Dallas and Friends because it was all just people that I had relationships with and you had relationships with through C3. But now we have a little bit more of a national focus this year. That's been an exciting part. I know I was in Ottawa a couple weeks ago, promoting BCIROC and talking about some of the softwood lumber work that I'm doing. But there is even nations in Ontario and Quebec that are interested in coming. I understand we have some national focus this year.
Well, Domtar's bringing 4 of their partners that are nationwide. So we started looking, do we need French language translation service or not? Like it's pretty cool. So yeah, Quebec and Ontario across the province of 4 different jurisdictions that they're operating in. So I think that's going to add a really interesting depth to the conversation for sure. And it's, I guess one thing just that you reflect back on from what you said is when you look at the language around some of the planning for the conference like 15 years ago, a lot of it was about participation and it was about jobs and employment and training, right? And now we're talking about ownership and net present value and return on investment, and we've got the First Nations Bank of Canada coming. So it's pretty amazing if we actually look back at what we were talking about 15 years ago to what we're going to be talking about in June. Like it's remarkable.
And the networking opportunities are just growing. I'm hoping to get one of them on as a guest, but I was dealing with a plywood manufacturer just a couple of weeks ago, and they actually reminded me that I met them at BCIROC and introduced them to a First Nations that they're rekindling some of their business with. They happen to be doing business in the TFL that Numicals was able to buy into. And so it's just amazing that this conference has actually produced some results. Instead of just talking about things that are going on, this is a place where some of these things are starting to happen now. I know having some of the chiefs from the Wet'suwet'en are now coming down because they've dealt with Coastal GasLink and all these other issues. So they want to come down and talk to other nations how they deal with some of these issues. And I think one of the other exciting things that we're doing again this year is the first show possibly. I think last year we sort of talked to each other like, are we mainstream enough that we shouldn't be doing something like that? Or is this part of the breaking open the envelope for more discussion? And I am very happy to both see and hear that last year when we had the fur fashion show, it was very well received. Everybody understood the importance of fur and wildlife in First Nations culture and the way that we were able to illustrate that and have some of those beautiful pieces. I mean, some of them are out of my price range a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about a bit of a per diem or something from C3 for BCIROC so I can afford one of these sealskin vests or a raccoon hat or something like that. But just, some of your thoughts on the networking opportunities that are there.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be an Indigenous artisan part of the show as well, and I think it's pretty cool to see some of the work that Indigenous artists are being able to do, both in that design of the Fur Canada fashions and some of their pieces. So there's going to be a full trade show. It's going to be quite a bit bigger than last year as well. It's a beautiful conference center.
The facility is great, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's going to be really comfortable there as well. And then, in terms of the networking, I mean, we're probably going to be over 500 people. Wow. And what I love about the conference is it does have that pragmatic backing to it, is that, a lot of groups have met, introduced, gone off to form joint ventures. And, that's what it was kind of built on, that foundation. And I love hearing those stories too. But also Minister Parmar is going to be coming, and you're going to be leading that panel. Any sneak peeks about what you're going to put him on the hot seat?
We're trying to grill him. I mean, his energy is awesome. He kind of reminds me of Pat Bell a little bit when Pat Bell became the Minister of Sustainable Resource Management. He just wanted to change everything and fix it. And I get kind of that vibes from Minister Parmar, who we just finished a podcast recording with. I believe it's out there now, but tune into that if you can. But yes, I hope the minister is going to come in and talk about the BCTS review, BC Timber Sales review, that's being led by one of our first guests of BCIROC, George Abbott, back in his previous life when he was Minister of Sustainable Resource Management and then Aboriginal Relations. He was one of our first keynote speakers back in Thunderbird Hall back in 2009, I think it was, when we had the first one.
Yeah. And yesterday, where were you? You were you've joined another advisory council, I think, and Mr. Popham's coming to the conference this year.
So Minister Popham's coming to the conference. I've been fortunate enough to be asked to provide some input and advice on the Premier's advisory task group on food security and agriculture. While agriculture isn't ingrained into my soul the way the Great Bear Rainforest is, the principles around collaboration and problem solving is really evident in that. Food security is an issue that we all face. And so the fact that the Premier decided that he'd like my advice on some of that shows that our relationship goes beyond some of the dad jokes that we share. I'm looking forward to him coming. He's going to come spend the lunchtime with us, and him and I are going to share some questions back and forth. It's really shaping up to just be a great Indigenous event. I mean, BCIROC is awesome. I love how you've integrated First Nations into all the panels, and because that's the reality of the world that we're living in right now. But this one's just a little bit different because these stories are all coming from our perspective. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we all need to share perspectives, but the fact that these are coming from an Indigenous lens, and this year, I believe we had 75 odd applicants to be giving panels and things like that. So that shows how far we've come. And I remember the first year, Dan Jepson threatening people in Victoria to come up and speak at the conference and just doing what he can to make the first couple a success, to the point that we're now turning people away, not only from the coast of British Columbia, not only from British Columbia, but Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. There's Indigenous issues that people have heard about this conference that they want to come and share with us now. So while I don't want to look past this year, I think BCIROC is really in a great place where we're going to become one of the go-to places where discussions like this really start.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's the breakout year. It's
it
going
is.
to be the turning point.
It is. It's the expectations raised, the time on the staff and demands get harder. I know my team's working very hard. I guess one snippet I'll share, just as, we're getting close to wrapping up this little, speed round of Res Dog walkers is, we're shooting in Vancouver right now. I believe it's May 8th today. Yesterday was Curtis Wilson's birthday. And so Curtis Wilson was instrumental in the beginning. He was the guy on the floor for me, just talking to everybody, making sure that was taken care of. Him and Dan driving each other crazy, making sure all the logistics were covered. But this year, the speaker's gifts are going to represent some of the work that Curtis has done. So, well, I don't want to, preempt a surprise. Curtis is going to be with us again this year. That's
awesome. Yeah, what a great man Curtis was. And I can't think of the conference without thinking of him as well. And that's really special.
Yeah. And now that it's come together, I mean, I talked about Res Dog Walkers, how it's taking a bit more of a, developmental approach. We're trying to do some new things based on the feedback that we've had from some of our listeners. This year, I'm going to introduce a little bit more of a First Nations, not cultural component from a song and dance point of view, but from some of the values that we share. So this year, I'm not going to tell you guys because I want you to all be panicking when I get up and start doing this, because that's just what I do to you guys. You guys have a tremendous amount of patience for me. And I'm sure it's hard for our viewers to understand how high maintenance I really am. It's actually worse than it seems when you listen to me speak on this platform. But we're just really looking at ways of continuing to make it ours and make it Indigenous. And the fact that government, industry, even environmental organizations are so looking forward to participating in this event, I think puts an accountability on us to keep striving for more. Reconciliation's it's not really a destination. It's really the path to it is what makes it work. And I really want to continue to see BCIROC be kind of a conduit to making that work.
I fully agree. And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't just cover off what some of the keynotes are going to be this year, because I think they just really exemplify that broad range. So obviously we've already mentioned Premier Eby, and former Chief of Cooks Ferry, David Wackham, will be delivering a keynote.
Wow, the man has worked in so many fields. He is going to be amazing. I mean, I don't think it's not about topping each other. I think John Jack just left us in such awe last year that following up with David Wackham is just going to be such a breath of fresh air for just his story and how he's going to be able to share it.
Yeah, so much experience. And then we're going to close out the conference with a keynote from Aaliyah Warbus.
Yes. I just talked about how challenging the elections were. We have a First Nations MLA who's actually the House leader for the Conservative Party. And, there's lots of rhetoric going back and forth. And so I'm literally looking forward to sitting down and having a discussion with her. I've actually never met her. I got to know her dad pretty well when he is the lieutenant governor of British Columbia. And so I got to go to Government House. He actually worked on a canoe while he was in there. They actually took one of the spare rooms and they made it a carving room. And he started carving this canoe with my uncle, Tony Hunt, who's since left us. He's actually the one who made this rattle that I wear. But just to be able to meet his daughter in the role that she's playing, I think just really exemplifies what BCIROC's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a year not to be missed.
All right. Well, for those of you listening to this and haven't registered yet, we're looking at over 500 delegates attending. I believe we have a virtual opportunity as well. We might have to edit that part out then. So
we
I
like
believe
people to be in the room,
Yes.
right? They have to show up to really build relationships.
That's true. That is true.
That's the part about IROC is that makes it special.
I was still stuck in COVID era when we were trying to do all these things. We did a couple of those COVID, and we got through them. They helped us get through some time. But I agree, being in the room and be able to feel the energy. There's a different energy at IROC.
It's how you have to build relationships, right? And I think that's really what's needed to move forward.
It is. So, I mean, again, I can't thank you enough for all the work you and your tremendous team do. I know I'm going to bust Logan's chops as much as I can. And, I'm going to stand outside doors because those of you who don't know me that well, I have a tendency to be tardy from time to time. And so it makes people like Sarah and other people who help make the bells and whistles run on time, it makes them a little bit nervous. But lately, I'm actually not late. I'll just stand outside a door and wait to see if someone's looking at their watch or someone will ask, have you seen Dallas yet? And then I'll make my entrance. But I'll try to be a little bit easier on you and your team this year. But to all of our listeners out there, June 18th to 20th, beautiful Nanaimo, BC. It's such a beautiful time of year to be there. I know Harbor Air has flights in the morning and the afternoon, so even if you can just come for a day, we look forward to having you June 18th to 20th at the Vancouver Island Conference Center in Nanaimo, BC.